Hello and welcome to Mr. Melvin Makes. Today we will be working on a wildcat, sort of jungle cat of your own imagination. I came up with this idea because the school I work at has the wildcat as its mascot. I also have two wildcats at home, Stella and Luna, so cats are a personal favorite for me. On the left I have kind of step-by-step directions in case you just want to follow along at your own speed. I'll try my best to include a PDF of that document just in case you want to work on a wildcat in your own setting. You probably saw first I put my name on the back. Always a great idea even if you're working by yourself. You also might notice I'm starting with a pencil. Mistakes are great, mistakes are welcome, it's how we learn. So making mistakes is totally cool. What isn't cool is wasting your paper because starting with Sharpie means you can't erase. Start with a pencil just in case. Right now I'm just moving through the steps. A lot of the wildcat is shapes and letters you might recognize. Starting with an upside down triangle and a sort of W gives me the beginning of the nose and snout. Adding two V's or upside down triangles and the letter Y kind of gives me the furrowed brow and the sharp fangs. Open box or rectangle for a mouth with teeth inside. Small M at the bottom to show the wildcat's furry chin. And you might recognize the ears are basically just the letter A tilted kind of diagonally. For the top of the head, I do kind of leave a little bump towards the middle just to show how the shape of the cranium or head is of a wildcat. And for my wildcat, I just kind of make a zigzag line on both sides connecting the ear to the jaw. You can make that as zigzaggy as you want. The more zigzags, I suppose, the more hairy your cat will look. The wildcat is a fierce animal, so I'm giving fierce eyes with lines moving in diagonally to show that he or she is focused on whatever it is he or she is growling at. From here, I'm just going to use my creativity to come up with a background. At this point, you might be tuning out just thinking, okay, I've got my wildcat, I know what to do next. You're the artist when you're making a drawing, so from here on out, follow me if you need some guidance. Otherwise, you know what to do. You're the artist. I want my wildcat to appear as if he or she is climbing out of some grass or some tall leaves. So I am showing those paws pushing away two sort of large, let's call them leaves, kind of approaching us as the viewer. To make this happen, I need to do some overlapping in my drawing, meaning I'm only showing the parts that are exposed and not what's behind. You see right now I'm actually correcting a mistake. If I were using Sharpie, I wouldn't be able to. Overlapping means that part of the leaf I just erased would be behind the body of the wildcat, behind the paw of the wildcat, so it wouldn't make sense to show it on top. A lot of this drawing right now is just me adding in background. Going forward, I'm going to show a step that I call outlining. A lot of YouTubers start with what I consider outlining, Sharpie first. My motto is always pencil first. So from here on out, I hope you enjoy a time-lapse session of outlining. Follow along in case you need to see all of these steps again in Sharpie this time. Alright, I am about to start coloring this picture. Again, you are the artist. You have total choice over the colors you choose. I am using mostly earth tones. I've got a black, dark brown, light brown, orange, blue, pink, and then green, dark green, and kind of a sky blue for my background. I just want to take a moment to describe the way I'm going to color this Wildcat in case you'd like to try it sort of as a challenge for yourself. Um, Depending on your level, you might just want to color it kind of solid. Try your best to stay inside the lines. I totally respect that. If you're looking for a little bit more of a challenge, kind of want to copy along with what I did a little bit of color mixing and blending to show sort of shading or value on top of my Wildcat. So you can see in the small area I've already colored, I started with my light brown. And now I'm just pressing a little bit harder with a dark brown in the areas I think you would see shadow. This is creating an effect of value that's showing that the Wildcat isn't flat, but is instead rounded or three-dimensional. To push that shading a little bit further, I'm even going to add some black into the corners to really show where the shadow is. If you don't know yet, you know now, my favorite color is orange, so adding a little bit of orange on top of the brown gives a pop of color and a little bit of variety. Going forward, I'm just going to kind of continue doing this in a time lapse, and I will jump back in to explain a little bit more when I get to the background. Alright, with the Wildcat done, I am about to start coloring in my background. I know for myself and the artists I teach in my classroom, this is a point where we start to kind of lose steam. So I want to make it as fun and engaging for anyone as possible. I really think it's important to have a beautiful background, but not one that takes away from the focal point or emphasis of your photo. We want the viewer to see that Wildcat. We want people to look at your Wildcat and notice it right away. But we still want a background that looks finished. So right now what I'm doing is I'm just showing how you can do a little bit of shading in your background to make a more interesting picture. Just like before on the Wildcat, start with your lighter color. This time it was my lighter green. And then in the corners or areas of shadow, push a little bit harder with dark green to show how those areas are darker than the rest of the leaves. I'm also using the dark green to show variety of grass and kind of add in texture by adding lines in my leaves and lines in the grass. In a second here, I'm going to show how I add some texture to these trees, just like I did in the time lapse. So I'm going to break that down a little bit slower for you so you can follow along. The tops of a tree would be full of texture because of all of the leaves that they have or contain. So instead of kind of coloring smoothly just side to side, I'm actually sort of scribbling in a way. I'm coloring in tiny circles to show the texture of the leaves. I start with my lighter color just like before, and then go back in with my darker green, kind of around where I have my lines drawn in Sharpie to show the darker section or shadow or shaded part. Next, for the trunk of the tree, again, start with your lighter color, kind of color it in solid. And to add that bark texture, just go right ahead in and add some kind of squiggly dark brown lines to show the texture of the bark. With all of those steps I just described, know that perfect doesn't exist. And in fact, the kind of messier you make it, the more realistic it looks. Stay inside the shapes that you drew and traced or outlined with Sharpie, but be a little messy with it to make it look really realistic like a tree. Um, Straight lines wouldn't look like bark. You need squiggly lines for the bark. Lastly, color in your sky however you want. I'm just doing a simple sky blue so it's not too distracting, but remember, you are the artist. You ultimately have choice. And lastly, make your mark, add your signature, because you should feel very proud of the creation you just made. Good work.